Good morning, distinguished past presidents, officers and trustees, delegates, members, and Education Board chairs and members. I'm pleased to address you this morning in regard to a very interesting and important issue, namely, why the Certifying Board continues to require CAAHEP or ABHES graduation for educator eligibility for the CMA AAMA certification examination. My article appeared in the September-October issue of CMA today. Some of you have received that. We also have some extra copies in the back. If you'd like a copy, could you hold up your hand and the pages will bring them to you. Let me explain why this is an important issue. It is because the 2015 CAAHEP standards read as follows. A program director of an accredited medical assisting program must be credentialed in good standing in medical assisting by an organization whose credentialing examination is accredited by the National Commission for Certifying Agencies, NCCA, or the American National Standards Institute, ANSI. Currently approved program directors without a credential from an accredited credentialing examination must meet that requirement within 2 years from the effective date of these standards. You can see why this is important because a program director that does not have an NCCA or an ANSI accredited medical assisting credential cannot serve as a program director of a CAAHEP accredited program. I do not fault Mayor whatsoever in this regard. I think this is actually a very positive requirement. It's important that students have a role model, an individual who has a medical assisting credential. I don't think that this is a negative element of the standards. I highly endorse it, but you can see how the conflict arises if a program director meets the other requirements but does not have a medical assisting credential accredited by the NCCA or ANSI, more precisely under ISO 17024, which is the standard that is applied by the American National Standards Institute and other bodies that accredit under that standard. The issue is if program directors cannot become CMAs AAMA because there's no eligibility pathway for the examination other than graduation from a CAAHEP or ABHES accredited medical assisting program, and if they're not a graduate of one of those accredited programs, then the program director oftentimes will have his or her students take one of the other accredited examinations, the RMA, AMT, etc. So this is why this is a very important issue. Let me talk now about the purpose of credentialing healthcare professionals. Let's advance the next slide, and we're going to refer to this later on in my talk. So please keep this in mind. The primary purpose of credentialing healthcare professionals is to protect patients. That's the key concept, by providing assurance that healthcare professionals have the necessary knowledge and competence in their field of practice. Competence can be defined as applying knowledge to accomplish or execute a task. This is the reason why there is credentialing for healthcare professionals. Indeed, this is the reason why there is credentialing for any occupation, for any profession, to ensure competence of those who have the credential. Let's move on to the next slide, if we may, and look at the components of a good credentialing program. First of all, the examination and all that goes into it must be psychometrically sound. In other words, it must be constructed based on an occupational analysis. It must be valid. It must be reliable. In other words, the examination must give consistent results over time. It has to be secure. It has to have all of these psychometric requirements that are evaluated by these accrediting bodies, by NCCA and under ISO 17024. I think many of you are aware that the CMA AAMA certification examination is without a doubt the most psychometrically rigorous of any medical assisting certification examination. The Certifying Board uses the National Board of Medical Examiners as test consultants, and their standards are the highest in the industry. I think you're also aware that the United States Medical Licensing Examination uses the NBME as its test consultant. Also, many specialty medical examinations use NBME. This is a testimony to the high quality of the psychometric standards of NBME that really exceed the requirements of the NCCA standards and 17024. I think you're also aware that the CMA AAMA certification program is accredited by both the NCCA and under ISO 17024. It is the only medical assisting credential that is accredited under those two standards, not just the NCCA standards, but also 17024. Secondly, the eligibility requirements must be in alignment with the purpose of the credential. This is included in 17024 and the NCCA standards. So it's incumbent upon a certifying board to determine which individuals should and should not be able to sit for its examination. That is just as important as having a psychometrically valid and reliable examination. Thirdly, there must be meaningful continuing competency or recertification requirements. Some of you may not be aware that the Certifying Board commissioned NBME to do a relevance study. That consisted of asking CMAs, AAMA, who have been working for 5 years or more, to look at a sample of questions in the item pool for the CMA AAMA certification examination to see whether the questions were relevant for the work they do as practicing medical assistants for 5, 7, 10, 15 years. In other words, is the CMA AAMA certification examination suitable for testing the knowledge that is needed not only by an entry-level medical assistant who has just graduated from a CAAHEP or ABHES-accredited program, but a CMA AAMA who has been working in the field for a number of years. The results of this relevance study indicate that the questions are just as relevant to test the knowledge that is needed by practicing medical assistants as it is for entry-level medical assistants. So again, that really strengthens the fact that the recertification requirements of the CMA AAMA certification examination are top-notch. Let's go to the next slide and look at a little bit of history. During the early decades of medical assisting, the profession was primarily administrative, a little bit clinical, but very heavily weighted toward the administrative. After a few years, employers desired some standardization of the education and training of medical assistants. And on the next slide, we see that led to the development of the essentials of an accredited educational program for medical assistants in 1969. These were the first essentials. And Ivy and I have spoken about this through the years, and you were instrumental in those, were you not? And Joan, I think, remembers those days as well. So the first essentials, the first requirements for accredited programs, 1969, were issued by the Council on Medical Education of the AMA. This is before CAAHEP, the Commission on Accreditation of Allied Health Education Programs, and even before CAAHEA, the Committee on Allied Health Education and Accreditation. There are actually two successor bodies to CAAHEP. And again, Ivy remembers that very well and was instrumental in that. Now, that first set of standards, or essentials as they were called, were very heavily administratively weighted with very few clinical skills and little clinical knowledge. And that was appropriate at the time because that was what was needed by employers. Let's move on to the next slide. Employers increasingly wanted medical assistants to have more clinical knowledge and skill, bringing you up to the 1999 CAAHEP standards, which included these tasks: to be able to perform venipuncture, capillary puncture, and apply pharmacology principles to prepare and administer oral and parenteral medications. So that's where we came from 1969 to 1999, driven again by the desire of employers to hire medical assistants who had a broader range of knowledge and skills. Let's move on to the eligibility pathways for the CMA AAMA certification examination, 1980 to 1995. These were the pathways. Number one, graduates of CAAHEA at that time accredited medical assisting programs. Secondly, work experience under the supervision of a licensed healthcare professional. 1 year of full-time, 2 years of part-time health work experience under the supervision of a licensed healthcare professional. I and Anna and Kathy said that so many times back then that it's embedded in my brain. That's the mantra that was in effect back then. There was a third pathway of interest to us this morning. An educator, an individual teaching in a medical assisting program, was eligible to sit for the CMA AAMA certification examination. Those were the three pathways in effect from 1980 through 1995. Let's move forward to 1993. At that time, the Board of Trustees was presented with the proposal that it established an ad hoc committee on the legality of clinical procedures. Note the rationale for the establishment of this committee. It was to increase, because of the increasing challenges to the right of CMAs AAMA to be delegated certain types of injections, there was a need for some solution to protect more effectively the rights of medical assistants, particularly CMAs AAMA, to be delegated intramuscular, intradermal, and subcutaneous injections. The chair of that committee was Joyce Nakano, another distinguished past president. I've often said we stood shoulder to shoulder on this issue, and figuratively, how about that? Now, this committee did not know the solution that it was going to propose for this problem of challenges to the rights of physicians to delegate injections to medical assistants. There were several meetings, and the consensus developed over time that the best solution would be to limit eligibility for the CMA AAMA certification examination to CAAHEA graduates, only to those individuals who had graduated from a CAAHEA-accredited medical assisting program. Again, CAAHEP didn't come into existence until a few years later. Now, again, this was not the plan of the committee. It was just given this charge from the Board of Trustees, come up with a proposal on how we can protect the right to practice of CMAs AAMA. That committee could have gone in a lot of different directions, but it decided, after much deliberation, that the best approach was to make sure that those who had the CMA AAMA credential from a point forward were educated in an accredited program as well as able to pass the examination. Let me read a sentence from my article that I think summarizes this. Specifically, the ad hoc committee concluded that by ensuring that all future CMAs AAMA would have demonstrated both psychometric skills, hands-on ability, as well as didactic knowledge by completing a CAAHEP-accredited, CAAHEA-accredited medical assisting program, that the AAMA would be able to fend off attacks on the practice rights of CMAs AAMA by indicating that individuals who hold the credential have been tested and trained in the psychomotor skills, not just educated in the didactic knowledge that is also so important. Again, the bottom line, protecting patients from substandard medical assisting practice. Let's move on to the next slide. After vigorous debate and presenting this to the education boards, to all the state societies, in early 1995, this matter was brought before the 1995 annual conference in San Antonio. I need to give kudos also to then President Cheryl V, who was extraordinary in leading us through that political thicket, which was very complicated. You can understand the position of the Curriculum Review Board at that time, the predecessor to MAERB, the Certifying Board, Continuing Education Board, the various state societies. It was quite a significant decision. At the annual conference, there was an open forum, and after the open forum, both the Certifying Board and the Board of Trustees, meeting separately, decided to approve the ad hoc committee's recommendation that only CAAHEP graduates be eligible for the CMA AAMA certification examination, beginning with the June administration of the test. Remember, at that time, there were just 2 administrations. This was well before computer-based testing. There was one January administration and one June administration every year. That was expanded to 3. There was an October administration added, and then the conversion was made to computer-based testing in 2009. So this was approved by the Certifying Board and the Board of Trustees to allow only graduates of CAAHEP-accredited medical assisting programs to be eligible for the CMA AAMA examination, beginning with the June 1998 administration. Let's move on to the next slide. The pathway was expanded to include graduates of ABHES-accredited medical assisting programs. There was a trial period and a lot of research and investigation. The determination was made at that time that ABHES programs were substantially similar in their requirements to CAAHEP programs at that time. So the decision was made that as of 2002, ABHES medical assisting graduates as well as CAAHEP medical assisting graduates would be eligible for the CMA AAMA certification examination. ABHES stands for the Accrediting Bureau of Health Education Schools. CAAHEP and ABHES are the only 2 bodies that programmatically accredit medical assisting programs. There are institutional accreditors and programmatic or specialized accreditors. Programmatic accreditors look specifically at a program. Institutional accreditors look at the school as a whole and give some scrutiny to the individual programs. But these programmatic accreditors are the ones that really look at the programs in depth. Let's go to the next slide, please. When medical assisting was more administrative, it was appropriate that the Certifying Board had these 3 pathways to the test: the work experience, being an educator, or graduating from an accredited program. So the pathways were quite appropriate at that time. However, as medical assisting became more clinical, employers began to insist that the graduates and the credentialees had psychomotor proficiencies in the skills that they wanted to delegate, and the accreditation requirements were modified accordingly, and the Certifying Board prudently changed its eligibility pathways. Professions evolve and change, and it's incumbent upon associations, certifying bodies, and accrediting bodies to change also. And remember the issue of the Certifying Board having the legal and ethical duty to protect patients from substandard medical assisting services. That was the motivation for the change going into effect in 1998 for the pathways. Let's go on to the next slide, please. Oh, I think we're a little farther back. A little farther back. Okay, go forward 1, please. Okay, 1 more, please. A key point that we have here is that a computer-based or a paper and pencil test cannot measure psychomotor skills. An essential point. A paper and pencil or a computer-based test can test whether the individual knows the order of steps to do a task, but it cannot test whether the individual has the manual dexterity, the digital dexterity, whatever, to be able to give an injection or do a venipuncture. This is an important fact that, again, was driving this change. As you know, competency checkoffs are required in CAAHEP and ABHES-accredited programs in which the ability of students to do these various competencies up to a standard are tested as well. So it's not just a matter of conveying didactic knowledge in these programs, but also testing whether the student has the psychomotor skills. And the individual will not graduate unless she or he can demonstrate those skills as well. Okay, key point. Creating a pathway for non-CAAHEP or ABHES-accredited graduates right now, I believe, would create CMAs who do not possess the full range of knowledge, skills, and professional attributes expected of medical assistants, because someone may be able to pass the CMA AAMA certification examination, as rigorous as it is, but if that individual doesn't have the ability to execute, to perform these tasks, then I believe that the right to practice of CMAs AAMA would be undermined, and we would not be able to make our case before state legislatures, before state boards, that medical assistants should be able to be delegated these tasks. More specifically, CMAs AAMA should be able to be delegated these tasks. Medical assistants who don't have education, who aren't tested on a rigorous examination, have not shown the didactic knowledge or the psychomotor skill to protect patients adequately from substandard medical assisting practices. Let's move on to the next slide. The position of the certifying board is based on the reality that creating an eligibility pathway now for medical assisting educators would result in effect in two categories of CMAs AAMA. Those CMAs AAMA who have graduated from a CAAHEP or an ABHES-accredited program and have demonstrated psychomotor skill as well as didactic knowledge, and those medical assistants who may be able to pass the CMA AAMA certification examination but have not demonstrated the skill or ability to do those tests. So again, such a state of affairs would hinder the ability of the AAMA to protect the rights of CMAs AAMA to be delegated tasks. All right, let's move on. I think we've come to a point where I can start addressing what the solutions are and what the solutions are not. This is not in the slides, but I am going to go forward in a minute. First of all, what are some possible solutions? Should MAERB change its standards language that I read before and not require program directors to have a medical assisting credential? I personally do not think that that's a solution. I agree with MAERB that it's important that program directors be role models, that they have a medical assisting credential so that they can enforce this or emphasize to their students the necessity of having a medical assisting credential. So I do not support the idea of MAERB changing its language so that it no longer requires program directors to have a medical assisting credential. Again, on all these points, you may have various opinions, and you're welcome to express them when I'm finished. Secondly, what about the solution of the certifying board creating a credential for educators, either the same test or a different test, and perhaps calling it a CMA-E, -E, or parentheses E? I do not agree with that solution for two reasons. First of all, we have advice from our outside legal counsel that having some sort of other credential with some sort of letters would jeopardize the fact that we have legal protection and registration for the three words certified medical assistant and for the CMA, AAMA initialism. We don't have registration for the three initial CMA. We've tried that 3 times, and we were opposed, first by the California Medical Association, and subsequently to that, some other groups. But having any type of other credential for educators, I believe, would jeopardize our ability to protect the uniqueness of the CMA, AAMA, and the certified medical assistant phrase. So I don't think that that is a good solution. Secondly, I believe, stepping into a marketing perspective, that creating another exam or having the same exam with different eligibility requirements for educators would, I think, dilute the brand of the CMA, AAMA credential. Think about that. Then there would not be a unified marketing standpoint as to what is a CMA, AAMA. There would be dilution, and I think that would undermine the effectiveness of the AAMA and the certifying board to market the distinctiveness of the CMA, AAMA credential. So 2 reasons for not having a CMAE: weakening the legal protection, the intellectual property protection we have, and secondly, diluting the brand of the CMA, AAMA. Thirdly, I need to raise this question: why should there be a special pathway for educators and not for other medical assistants? Can you see other medical assistants saying, well, you've opened up the examination to educators. I have so many years of experience, or I have a bachelor's degree in whatever, or master's degree in whatever. Why don't you open up a pathway for me so that I can qualify for the CMA, AAMA certification examination? You did that for educators. Well, I'm better than any educator. I have a master's degree, whatever. So I think that that is a problem that the certifying board would face. If you open up a pathway for educators, where do you draw the line? Who else should be eligible on the basis of an exception? So I don't believe that that is a good direction to go, to open up a pathway. Some have said, well, why don't you establish an accredited-based certificate in medical assisting education or allied health education? I think you know that the Continuing Education Board is about to launch its assessment-based certificate in geriatrics. You've seen the promotion for that. Someone could say, well, why doesn't the CEB do a similar thing for education, for allied health education or medical assisting education? First of all, that would not meet the language in the CAAHEP standards because, as I read to you before, the requirement is that the medical assistant have a credential that is accredited by either the NCCA or under 17,024. Assessment-based certificates do not meet that definition of a credential that can be accredited under those 2 requirements. Also, I would submit to you, and many of you know better about this than I do, that it would be difficult to create an assessment-based certificate that would cover such a broad area as allied health education or medical assisting education. I don't think that that's a suitable vehicle for an ABC, an assessment-based certificate. Getting back to the ABC in geriatrics, keep in mind that the prerequisite is that the individual have a current CMA, AAMA credential. So likewise, I don't think it's reasonable for the CEB to create an ABC in health education without having some requirements, and I don't think that that is a solution. I do want to talk about other bodies that have educator credentials. Some of you have the AMT, Allied Health Instructor credential, or you've heard of that, the AHI. That is not an examination. It's not even an assessment-based certificate. It's based on a portfolio review by AMT of the experience, the work that an instructor can present and would receive this designation. So keep that in mind. The Allied Health Instructor credential is not a certification, and it's not even an assessment-based certificate. Well, I've told you what I don't think are solutions. Let me offer some things that are solutions. First of all, I think one short-term direction would be for ABHES and CAAHEP accredited programs to be more flexible in providing advanced placement to individuals, to educators, or anyone who may have other education or other degrees and want to graduate from a CAAHEP or an ABHES accredited program and yet do not want to go through the whole program starting from the beginning. There are programs that offer advanced placement that allow students or individuals who are licensed in another health profession, for example, to perhaps test out of some courses. I think if this were more prevalent, there would be an easier pathway for educators who've not graduated from a CAAHEP or ABHES accredited program to do so and then be eligible to take the CMA AAMA certification examination. I realize that there are institutional barriers to that. Some schools are not open to that. I am fully aware of that. However, I think if there were a bit more flexibility to allow these fine program directors who have a background in radiology or whatever, lab tech, etc., to be able to demonstrate to an accredited program that they do have knowledge in some of the course requirements. They would still have to demonstrate the psychomotor competence in the various requirements. And again, that's the key element. We don't want these two classes of CMAs, AAMA. Those who have didactic knowledge and psychometric skills or psychomotor skills, and those who just have didactic knowledge. A long-term solution I would like to propose is that more graduates of CAAHEP or ABHES accredited programs should continue on to obtain higher degrees and become program directors in CAAHEP or ABHES accredited programs. Now that may seem idealistic, and we hear that there are not a lot of graduates of CAAHEP or ABHES programs or CMAs AAMA, or not enough that have baccalaureate or master's or doctoral level degrees. I think there's a reason for that, and that is the lack of a widely accepted career ladder for CMAs AAMA. I'm not just referring to ad hoc solutions. One program might talk with another program in its university and allow some of its credits to be counted toward that. That's very good and very noble, but I think there needs to be a widely accepted career ladder for medical assistants who have graduated from a CAAHEP or ABHES accredited program. Now let me use some comments that I received within 3 weeks, within the last 2 months. Let's move on to the next slide. And again, these refer to nursing. It's only a good example, but it extends well beyond that. So I'm not just saying that the only career ladder should be nursing by any means. Notice this comment. Why do we not have a course available for medical assistants to become LPNs or RNs like they do for LPNs to become RNs? I am a medical assistant with an associate degree, and I'm being told that I must do the entire course to become an LPN or RN when, in fact, I have a lot of classes already done. It's frustrating to know that we are very close to an LPN and there is no program to cross over. Again, this is talking about nursing, but it can be applied to other disciplines. Another quote from a different individual. In this state, a medical assistant cannot easily become an LPN. A CNA can, however. Think about that. The equity of that, the logic of that, which I do not understand because CMAs AAMA take more classes and learn way more than CNAs who only take a 3-month class. I think we would all agree with that. Let's go on to the next quote. I also have a CMA AAMA, 13 years, and have thought about going on to become an LPN, but would have to start over from scratch, even though I also hold a 2-year AAS degree. from an accredited medical assisting program. Next quote, I have a question regarding the CMA AAMA credential. Several of my fellow CMAs AAMA, including myself, were looking into the RN program at our local community college. Could we go to the next slide, please? Okay, all right. Let me just read this. Requirements for every school state we must have a CNA 1. You may be aware that some states have CNA 1, CNA 2. Our question, is there a bridge program for CMAs AAMA to become RNs? I know there are bridges for LPN to RN. We have a 2-year degree from an accredited school, but it is not recognized as a fitting degree for entry to nursing school. Is this something the AAMA or whomever is looking into, or something that they would look into? Finally, I'd like to quote from a Washington State bill. Now, the Washington State medical assisting legislation is not ideal by any means, and Pat Hightower can tell you that. And she and Tom Wolf and I testified a lot in Olympia. Pat, where are you? Raise your hand. Is Pat here? Okay, yes, yes. So it's not an ideal regulatory system under Washington law. Nevertheless, I think there is some wisdom in this Senate bill that was enacted in 2012. Within existing resources, the Secretary of the Department of Health shall develop recommendations regarding a career path plan for medical assistants. The Secretary shall consult with stakeholders, including but not limited to healthcare practitioner professional organizations, organizations representing healthcare workers, community colleges, career colleges, and technical colleges. The recommendations must include methods for including credit for prior learning. The purpose of the plan is to evaluate and map career paths for medical assistants to transition by means of a career ladder into other healthcare professions. The recommendations must identify barriers to career advancement and career ladder training initiatives. So I think the Washington legislature did have some insight into the fact that medical assistants are not able to transition to other healthcare professions if they choose to do so. Nothing is saying that they should do so, but if they should want to do so, there should be career ladders or lattices for graduates of CAAHEP or ABHES-accredited programs who are CMAs, AAMA, to be able to move into other positions, perhaps get higher degrees and become program directors in CAAHEP or ABHES-accredited programs. Ultimately, I see that as the best of all solutions, but I think there are barriers that prevent that, and that's why there is this lack, as I'm told, of CMAs, AAMA with higher degrees that the institution requires, the school requires for program directors in some cases. I think you know that within nursing there is a very logical career pathway. The CNA to the medication aide, to the LPN, to the associate degree RN, to the baccalaureate degree RN, to the APRN, the master's, the doctor of nursing practice, etc. I feel that medical assisting as a profession is suffering because there is a lack of an easy and readily available pathway for CMAs, AAMA to advance into other fields or other areas. At this point, I'll just open the floor to any questions or comments. I know this is controversial. Some of you may not agree with this, but if we could have a few minutes to take any questions or comments, I think that would be appropriate. Any questions or comments? Again, my article is in September-October issue of CMA Today. It's on the website as well, so you would be able to study that at length. Yes, Lori Rager.
Mr. Balasa, we appreciate all that you do for us as an association, and I think you have given us some real wonderful ideas of what we can do for furthering education, especially as educators of those individuals that may have not had an opportunity for this pathway before. I'd like to thank you once again, and I think the whole group is on board as far as you carrying on with this information.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Microphone 4.
My name is Tammy McLeish, CMA, AAMA, State of Ohio. I used to work for the Ohio Board of Regents, and we were doing a great job creating a pathway for nurses, but the State of Ohio would like to take a look at this and try to help through the Ohio Board of Regents, because there is a pathway for career tech for medical assisting, but we would like to help you in taking a look at the career pathway for the medical assistants into higher education.
Thank you, and I'd be most happy to help the Ohio Board of Regents, a group that I have great respect for in any way.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Agreements or disagreements? Microphone 4.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Chua, AAMA certified. I think it's college dependent. A lot of associate degree CMAs have a pathway to go into the RM program. Core courses that do not necessarily meet a diploma program, they have to proceed up the ladder. They have those core courses. They have anatomy and physiology. They have biology, at least in our college. And then they can easily go into nursing from there and do not have to retake any kind of tests, any kind of classes, because they meet that entry level to the RN program.
With what school are you affiliated, Cheryl?
Mount Aloysius College in Crescent, Pennsylvania.
Thank you. I think you are a minority in that regard. Thank you. Do you have a one-year certificate or diploma program or a 2-year associate degree program? Do you have an associate degree program or a 1-year certificate?
Associate degree program.
Okay. How many hours do you have in the program total?
60.
How long does it take to complete the program?
4 semesters.
Okay. Thank you.
And I have several of our students who have gone on to RN to BSN. I mean, from CMA to RN.
Is St. Aloysius a 4-year college?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Thank you. Comments, questions? Microphone 2.
Good morning. My name is Tabatha O, AAMA, CMA, RMA, AMT, and CPT from Connecticut. I just wanted to say I've been a CMA for 4 years now, and I am going back to school for an RN, and I'm going back on top of that for APRN. So I do wish to continue my education, and I just want to say, after spending $18,000 for my MA degree, I cannot continue my education with my current education that I have. I do have to start all over again. They are not accepting any of my credits. So all that money I spent and time away from my kids for my 2-year education, I do have to start again.
Okay. Obviously, you did not attend St. Aloysius or Mount Aloysius. Thank you. Thank you very much, Tabatha. Yes, Debbie.
Debbie Odegaard, CMA, AAMA from Iowa. I think there are a lot of issues here. If mayor requires that the program director be a credentialed medical assistant, I think we need to look at the history of career education. In the 60s, 70s, and 80s, the nurses weren't all coming forward with their master's degrees. They first of all had to be that career, and then they had so many years once you're hired to finish your degree. So we're 60 years old now. We should have more maybe that have a degree, but the other problem is in the career of a medical assistant, you don't make a lot of money to have money to go on to school. And I have had graduates that already come to me with a BA. Some have had a master's, but it makes no difference in their pay. so that they don't have that incentive through their employer to get more education. And my other question is, why would a medical assistant, if you want to stay in the career of a unique skill set to work in a physician's office, why would you want to go be an LPN or RN unless you want to go work at a hospital? But those are two entirely different pathways, hospital-based or ambulatory care. So I guess we need to educate people that there are other ways. You know, maybe it's going to have to be in business or something if we can't find something that works better. But that's just some confusion I have with that.
Thank you, Debbie. And again, there are many other possibilities other than nursing. We could list many, but your point is well taken. Thank you. Yes, Denise.
Denise Gregory, CMA AAMA, State of Iowa. I think I can shed some light to Deb why this is so important and why we need to be cognizant of the need to create this pathway. I am a CMA AAMA, and I went back to school and got my BS in Healthcare Administration. I'm currently pursuing a master's in Healthcare Administration. However, my goal is to be the director of a large clinic setting, and because of the JCAAHEP regulations on the competency testing, if you're not an RN, you cannot supervise RNs. Therefore, a CMA has a very large challenge in trying to take any management position or directorship in clinic settings, not hospitals, clinic settings. And without that, we will never be able to increase our wages because our career track will be held to only certain disciplines.
That's a good point, Denise. But let me ask you a question. Are you sure that that is in the Joint Commission Standards for Ambulatory Care as opposed to being a policy of the clinic? Okay, I would beg to differ with JCAAHEP on that point, and we need to look at the standards. I've reviewed the ambulatory care standards. So this is in a clinic, you said, is that right? I don't see that language in there, but that's another matter. We can pursue that, perhaps. Judy, please.
Judy Cronenberger, CMA AAMA, RN, CMRS, and PhD. I just have a quick comment to make. I think that we're doing a disjustice to our CMA AAMAs here who do an excellent job every day. They work very hard. They do not get the pay and the recognition that maybe an RN and an LPN get, and that's unfortunate. I don't know that having a pathway and making everybody go through LPN and RN school is the answer. I think it is. I don't know about the JCAAHEP situation mentioned earlier, but I do know that many corporate entities, for some reason, I think it's lack of education, frankly. I think they don't understand what a medical assistant is, and they have this hierarchy. They think that the nurses are up here, the medical assistants are down here, and that's where we have to change the mindset. But I can tell you that I fully support CMA AAMAs. I tell my students all the time this is not a stepping stone to nursing. They are two different fields. It's unfortunate that nurses make more. I can tell you, though, as an RN, I didn't start out making $1 billion, and I've been in medical assisting education for more than 20 years. If it was about money, I would still be at a hospital. It's about working with patients in an office and taking care of them. So, you know, it's not the same. It's just, and it's different,
Judy.
and I don't want it to be a stepping stone.
Yes, thank you. Other comments or questions? Past President Vineyard, microphone 1.
Well, this is Cheryl Vineyard, CMA, AAMA, and I was going to tell you that Eastern New Mexico University actually has a pathway. They will take 45 to 60 credit hours from a college. So if you have an associate degree, you can get a bachelor's degree in occupational education. It's totally online. They also have a master's degree, which I've accomplished since I've been working as an educator. And it's a master's in professional technical education, and it is online as well. So, and I think that Mary Day got her bachelor's similarly that way. There are still some schools out there, but you just need to pursue looking into them. If you want to be an educator, or you're looking for further education, there are some schools out there that are willing to do that.
Thank you, Cheryl. Tracy.
Tracy Fuquay, CMA AAMA from Alabama. Athens State University has just opened a bachelor's degree option. I just became aware of this. I graduated there with a health science bachelor's degree. It's a technical education post-secondary instructor option, and it's a totally online program also, and this is Athens State University in Athens, Alabama.
Thank you for that information, Tracy. Yes, Linda, please.
In response to the lady over there who says that CMAs are not going to be, she doesn't want them as a pathway to nursing. In New Hampshire, we actually have an organization that is a healthcare nursing home setting that's looking for CMAs to come in and take care of their unit administration, do some clinical work, and do some other administrative duties. They have to, in order to get nursing hours to get paid by the state, have to become CNAs. It's a state requirement. That's how the state's letting us get in there. The issue with that is I don't know whether it's the state or the Board of Nursing, is also requiring that they take the entire CNA course over again. So to practice as a CMA, they need to take the CNA course. They would not allow them to abbreviate the course. They would not allow them to test out or do competencies to get out of that. They have to take the entire course all over again, even though they have their CMA. So it's not necessarily a stepping stone. It's sliding over and trying to broaden what we do. But we need to have certain credentials to do that, and it's not easy to do those. You have to start over to get a separate credential to do exactly what we're doing.
And this is the state of New Hampshire. Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Linda. Other comments or questions? Microphone 3, please.
Thank you. Leticia Velez, CMA AAMA, Arizona State Society. And I just want to make a comment in regards to allowing other organizations to become like the for the CAAHEP or ABHES sponsors for the programs, working day to day in a clinic as a vaccine coordinator, and as far as patient protection, we have in our organization MAs who have not set for any exam where the substandard education that they receive, they don't have those skill sets that are required. And I can't tell you how many times I have caught these MAs where they're making medication errors. And I think that if we allow those standards to be added to include them to sit for an exam without having that skill set is not right, because I think first and foremost when we become into this profession, it's because we have a passion to care for patients, and in not having that skill set, I think we fall short.
Thank you very much for sharing that. One more comment, please. Microphone 4.
Amy Samuel, CMA, AAMA, AHI-AMT. And I'm just curious if you could respond to how many of the programs are going to be affected by this, and are we at risk of our CAAHEP accredited schools, because they're not in compliance, being put on probation, and then we're limiting?
Right. You know, I don't think I'm the appropriate person to respond to that. Perhaps...
Certifying Board?
Pardon me?
The Certifying Board? Or?
Well, no, this is a question for the Medical Assisting Education Review Board.
Okay.
Mary Day is the chair. Raise your hand, Mary.
I guess I'm just concerned that if half of our schools then go on probation, then what are our students going to be going to schools that are accredited but not on...
That's an important question.
Yeah.
Again, is Sarah Marino in the room, the Executive Director of MAERB? Okay, but anyway, that is a MAERB issue, Amy, a very important question, but it is not for me to address that.